This is my take on the top 10 enthusiasm tips of Moses. Hey fellow enthusiasts, this is Tommy Lanham, and I am on a mission to help you break out of the monotony of the mundane and the mediocre so you can break through to your enthusiasm zone. Number 10, do not covet. In other words, be content with what you have. Do not always be wanting what other people have. Do not fall into the syndrome of believing that the grass is always greener on the other side. It will tear you up inside because you will never have enough. You will always be thinking, man, if I had what they have, I'd be happy. And if you get that, guess what? You're not happy because then you want what they have. And as soon as you get that, guess what? You're not happy. And then you want to have what they have. But then when you get it, you're not happy. Why? Because that doesn't bring happiness. That is not where our enthusiasm comes from. Our enthusiasm doesn't come from always wanting more. Our enthusiasm comes with being content with what we already have. Number 9, be honest. Don't lie. Moses tells us in the 10 Commandments to not lie. In other words, be honest. Honesty really is the best policy. Listen, if you're in a situation where you're thinking, well, if I just tell a little white fib here, it's going to get me out of this, or if I tell just a little lie here, it's going to make everybody happy, it's going to be better for everyone. It is never better for everyone. And to be honest, it's not even better for you. First and foremost, whenever you tell a lie, you have to have an excellent memory because you got to remember the lie so that you don't accidentally say something that contradicts the lie that you said. So you have to have an excellent memory. You've got to always be thinking about it. If you're just honest, you can let it go. You can let it go. You don't have to worry about remembering exactly what you said. You know what you said because you were honest about the reality, about the truth. When we are honest, we have more energy to live with enthusiasm because we're not using up all of our energy to try to continue to cover up the lie. Number 8, do not steal. This ties right in with the one we just talked about being content and not coveting what other people have. Because what that will do, that will lead us to do things in order to get that. And sometimes it is dishonest things. Sometimes we will go all the way to the point of stealing something from somebody else, and we will try to justify it. Many people do this with their jobs. They will steal little things like pens or pencils or staplers or just these small things, and they go, oh, they'll never miss it. Guess what? Even if they don't, you've damaged your own self. You've damaged your own being because it is dishonest to take what is somebody else's and to claim it for your own. It robs us of the enthusiasm that we would otherwise have just simply because we are taking what belongs to somebody else. Number 7, be faithful to your spouse. I know we live in a culture that glorifies the more people you can sleep with, the better life will be, the more fun you have. But studies have shown that the reality is those people who are committed to one person for their entire lives live happier lives. If you want to live with enthusiasm, be committed to your spouse. If you're not married, be committed to God in your celibacy. That is where enthusiasm comes from. Number 6, do not murder. It probably goes without saying, if you want to live a life of enthusiasm, you probably shouldn't kill other people. However, Jesus took this a step further. And he spoke not just to the action, but to the heart when he told us to not even be angry. with somebody. Now listen, sometimes we can be angry with a situation. And in some situations, that is okay. We even see some places in the scripture where Jesus was angry. But when we single it out to a person, that is a different issue. We can be angry with a situation. We can even be angry with an action. But it doesn't mean we're angry with a person, because that anger can lead to something worse. And it can even lead to murder. Listen, there are people that have taken the lives of other people that you would look at and think, they could never do that. And probably even thought about themselves, they could never do something like that. But when we allow anger to build up inside of us, it will lead us to do things we would not otherwise do. If you are experiencing anger, my encouragement is to deal with that in some way. Pray about it, talk with a friend about it, go to a counselor and talk to them about it if that is what is necessary. Do whatever it takes to deal with the anger, because that anger will literally rob you of the enthusiasm, that fullness of life that Jesus came to give us. That God-inspired fire ignited deep within us can be dampened by the anger that we have for other people. Number 5 of Moses' top 10 enthusiasm tips is to honor your parents. And I believe this applies regardless of where you are in life. If you are a 5-year-old, you're a 50 years old, or you're 95 years old, honor your parents. Listen, your parents have messed up. I'm a parent. I've messed up. My parents messed up. Their parents messed up. None of us are perfect. And if we want to look at our parents and nitpick all the bad things they've ever done, we could do that. But what good will it do? Honor your parents. I'm not saying you have to ignore those times that they've messed up, or you have to pretend like that didn't happen. I'm not saying that at all. And listen, there may be situations again where you're dealing with such issues that you had with your parents, and maybe they even had with you, that you've got to hire a professional counselor to deal with that. And if that's a situation, do that, because I think that through that, you can be honoring your parents. Respect them. Give them that honor that we should all give them, because guess what? We were not perfect kids either. Honor your parents. Show them respect. Don't talk bad about them to other people and putting them down. Yes, they've made mistakes. You've made mistakes. Other parents have made mistakes. But they've also done some good things. Talk about those things. Focus on those things. When we focus on the good, then it literally feeds us with enthusiasm. Number 4, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Now, there's at least 2 aspects we can look at this: worship and rest. We need a time set aside when we are able to just completely focus on God and worship Him. It doesn't mean that we never worship Him any other time. For those of us who are believers in most of Christian tradition, not all, but in most Christian tradition, we have chosen Sunday to do that. Specifically Sunday morning, we come together, we worship God, we give Him our praise, we give Him our time, we give Him our honor, we give Him all of that. We've set aside that time. But listen, some churches do it on Saturday. I believe that's okay. Kind of a recent trend is some churches are doing services on a Thursday. I'm okay with that. But give God that time. Now, it doesn't mean that's the only time that you give Him. You continue to worship Him at other times. The way you live, the way you treat people. You can just burst out into song at any moment, worshiping God. That's okay. But have that specific time set aside each week where you have a day where you come together and you worship God. Now, the other side of that same coin is rest. Find a day to rest. We know, not only from the Bible, it's always amazed me when we have studies that determine how correct the Bible was. There has been study after study after study that has shown that we are more productive when we work 6 days out of 7 than if we work 7 days out of 7. Why are we more productive? Well, maybe, just maybe, God made us that way. He made us to have a day set aside for not only worship, but also for rest. If you are constantly working 7 days a week without any off days, it will drain you. You will be less productive, and the productivity that you do have will be lower quality because you have not given your body and mind the time to rejuvenate. We need that rejuvenation. We need that rest. If we're going to perform at our top level every 7 days, you need a break. Take a rest. It will feed your enthusiasm. Number 3, respect the name of God. God's name is holy. Now, when we talk specifically about His name is Yahweh. I want to talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But also just using the term God in a cheap or sometimes even a vulgar way is disrespect to God. And when we do that, we are literally putting down the one who created us. You guys, if you've been listening to me, you know that enthusiasm originally meant God and you are God inspired. How can we live with that enthusiasm when the reality of that enthusiasm is God in us and we are literally putting that down? We are putting Him down when we put down His name. When we use it in a vulgar or empty way. So be careful of when you say God. Make sure you do it in a respectful and honoring way. When you say the word Lord, I understand those are titles more so than the name, but I believe it also applies. Make sure when you use the term Lord, when you're referring to God, that it's respectful, that it is honoring to Him. And even the name Yahweh, here's an interesting thing about that. Yahweh is literally spelled YHWH. Now, in our English, we have added a couple of vowels to it so that we can know how to pronounce it, or it makes more sense to pronounce it Yahweh. But the reality is, we don't really know how to pronounce it. Why? Because the Jewish people considered the name of God, this is the personal name of God, they considered it so holy and so reverent that they did not feel worthy to pronounce it. And therefore we have lost the pronunciation of it. And the amazing thing about that is that sometimes we use it so flippantly today. When I was in college, and guys, I share this from embarrassment. When we were in college, you kind of develop, whenever you're a part of a culture, you kind of develop a comedy within that culture. Certain jobs have it, certain cultures have it. Bible college culture had that. Sometimes you'd be in conversation and you would say something and people would go, no way! You've probably heard that. People are kind of, I can't believe that. No way! And we kind of developed this thing, and it was supposed to be a joke. And I'm guilty of doing this. Where we wouldn't say yes way, we would say Yahweh. And I did this along with others. And I thought it was funny, kind of using that Bible humor, and Yahweh, and people get it. And it was, in that sense, it was kind of funny. But one day it dawned on me, I'm making a joke of the personal name of God, of which the Jewish people in Old Testament times considered so holy that they did not even feel worthy to pronounce it. And I'm not talking about pronouncing it in a joke or saying it in a joke. I'm talking about saying it at all. That they did not feel worthy to even say his personal name. And here I was just making it a joke. And I tell you what, the Holy Spirit convicted me on that. And I stopped. And I asked forgiveness. Because once I realized what I was actually doing, man, it tore me up. It drained my enthusiasm. It drained my joy, my happiness. Because I realized how disrespectful I was being. And so I stopped. Now, there's nothing in the Bible says we cannot pronounce the name of God, the personal name for God, Yahweh. And so in saying it, I don't feel like I'm disrespecting it. I'm not of the same conviction as the Jews were, that they didn't even say it at all. But I am of the conviction that I need to be very honoring and respectful and revere the personal name of God when I use it. Because it's more than just a word. It is a very personal name of God. Because he is a personal God. And I want to cherish that. I want to honor that. And when I do, that helps to fan the flames of that enthusiasm, that God-inspired fire ignited deep within my soul. When I speak the personal name of God in a honoring, revered way. He is Yahweh. And once we understand the meaning of that, it will feed your enthusiasm. Number 2, do not make idols. Do not make idols. In other words, do not make gods of other things. Now, you may say, Tommy, I've never made an idol. I've never carved an image and put in my house and bowed down and worshiped it. And that may be true. It's not as common today as it used to be. It still happens, but it's not as common as it used to be. But we will oftentimes make idols out of other things. Maybe our money, maybe our cars, maybe our houses, maybe our favorite sports team, maybe our hobby. Could be a number of different things. Maybe it's our achievements. And we literally make an idol out of those things. And when we do, it causes destruction in us. It robs us of the enthusiasm that we would otherwise have. Why? Because we are taking our focus off of God and we're making other things even more important than God. Anything that comes between you and God is an idol. Make sure you wipe those things out of your life if you truly want to live with enthusiasm. All right, here we are. Number 1. The number 1 enthusiasm tip from Moses. And you probably already know what this is if you've been following along. You can find these in Exodus chapter 20. But the number 1 is to worship God alone. Now, this ties right in with number 2. I agree. We don't want to make those idols. Why? Because there's only one true God. When we live in the light of the fact that there is only one true God, it will transform our lives. When we take out everything else and we say, none of this has meaning, none of this has meaning. What has meaning is my focus on God and what stems out from that. It's what God gives meaning to that truly has meaning. If we want to fan the flame of this God-inspired fire ignited deep within our soul that drives us to never settle, to live with passion, and to turn the world upside down, then we need to focus more and more on God. I just had a conversation with a guy, and we were talking about some challenges that we were going through. And he asked me the question, what have you learned through this challenge? And after I thought for a minute, I said this. I said, it's the same thing that I learned through other challenges. Eventually, with every challenge, I come to this conclusion. I must depend on God. I've got to depend on Him. I can't do it on my own. I got to depend on God. If I look at every situation and I think, if I just do step 1, step 2, and step 3, everything will be fine because that'll fix it, then I have lost my dependence upon God. And you know what? Step 1 and step 2 and step 3 don't always fix it. As a matter of fact, most of the time it doesn't. It's my dependence upon God. It's my focus on God. It's my worship of God and God alone that fans the flames of that enthusiasm, that God-inspired fire ignited deep within my soul that drives me to never settle, to live with passion, and to turn the world upside down. The more I worship God and God alone, the more that flame grows inside of me and leads me on this enthusiasm journey. So there you have it. The 10 enthusiasm tips of Moses. And you've probably already picked up on this. These are the 10 commandments that you find in Exodus chapter 20. Listen, those commandments are valuable for us today. As much value as they were then. And if you truly want to live a life of enthusiasm, my encouragement is to take these 10 tips, these 10 commandments seriously and apply them to your life in every way you possibly can. Make your decision, ignite your fire, and live with enthusiasm. Here we go. All right, guys, which one of these 10 tips are your favorite? The one that you think is above and beyond any other? Or maybe there's some other teachings of Moses that you feel like should have been included in this. Let me know. I want to hear your feedback. I want to know how this resonates with you.